welcome to episode 19 of the Full-Time Banter Show. This is part 2, the film section. Make sure you like, share and subscribe. I am Rootin' Tootin' Tarek.
And I am El Poco Bastido Arriba!
Yes, this is not a reimagining of Brokeback Mountain.
Oh,
this is...
Fucking all the way things are going, mate.
This is our top 5 Western show.
Alrighty.
Yes, yeehaw and all of that. It's proved extremely popular. I am shocked.
Yeah.
I am absolutely shocked because I thought this was going to be a bit too niche. I didn't think that many people would be into it, but we've just been bombarded. We have. It's
surprising. I think this is going to rival our longest FPL sessions.
Yeah.
Our videos. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't get kicked out. Yeah. So let's just get underway straight away. Westerns. I love them. Yeah. I've been watching them since I was a kid. Most people have. Some of the people who've messaged in, they've been brought up on it, watching it with their dads and stuff. You've just said similar likewise. But just to give you a bit of brief breakdown for people who aren't into the films as much or the westerns are not familiar with them, there's kind of two eras. Pre-60s, yeah, which is the traditional, how can I say it? They used to call it the white hat, black hat. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, the sheriff and
the good guy, bad guy. Yeah, where all these immigrants came over, slaughtered the natives, and then started killing each other. Yeah, but the white guys were always the good guys. Yeah, and if there are any Native Americans in the films, they were also white actors. Yeah,
can't be a bit browning up.
So those are the films I don't like and I've not hardly seen at all. Hence my dislike of The Duke.
John Wayne.
Yes.
Get off your horse and drink your milk.
That's it. The only reason I came across him and looked him up briefly was due to Jean Reno's Leone, which we spoke about way back in the summer, talking about our personal favourites, and he does that exact impression. So I thought, who is this guy? Looked him up, did not like him. Then there are the post-60s westerns, dubbed the spaghetti westerns.
Sergio Leone.
Yes, and many other Italian and Spaniard directors. And they were kind of subgenre and they were looked down upon by the American film industry and the studios. Those are actually the better films, in my humble opinion. Because those are the ones where the likes of Sergio Leone and Fucci and all these other guys subverted it and turned it on its head, and it was no longer, you know, the fair-skinned against the dark-skinned. It was all a mishmash, and it was set in the Civil War and all kinds of things like that. And interestingly, this relates also to Once Upon a Time in America. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at these films, I mean, it will rarely happen here. But make sure you're always watching the European version, the European cut, or the director's cut, because the US market, US studios, always used to chop the films down to 2 hours max. And it happened with Once Upon a Time in America, and it completely flopped. And then they released the full longer version because he actually wanted to do that as 2 films, but he made it shorter. And similar happened with a lot of these spaghetti westerns, so that's a point to remember. But that said, anything you want to add before we...
No, just I think Clint Eastwood deserves a lot of praise. He's going to get some anyway.
Yes.
But I think he was one that sort of took the spaghetti westerns and brought them back to America and then did his own versions of them. And I think that inspired a lot of people.
Yeah, because having worked with the legend that is Sergio Leone, and I mean there's other, directors we'll mention as well, but let's get straight away.
Yeah, because there's a lot to get through.
Yes, so I'm going to start with this message from our friend Craig Holden, who hosts a YouTube channel called at Anfield Agenda. Yeah, lovely gentleman, Liverpool fan, A, and B, Irish as well. Absolutely no reason to dislike the fella, and he sports a very similar hairstyle to myself too. He said, when I put this out on Twitter, "This is one subject that I'm totally unqualified to discuss, gents. Craig, I've never let that stop me. Don't think I've ever watched a Western unless Blazing Saddles counts."
It does.
100%.
Definitely does.
Yeah, Blazing Saddles, you seen it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm amazed.
Classic film that I've seen. Shot though.
Yes, Blazing Saddles.
Must be Tom then.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a comedy. Yeah, it's fantastic. It starts Arnie And the comedian's name, I forget. I'm terrible with names.
Gene
Wilder, yes. I always want to call him Richard Pryor. I know he's not Richard Pryor.
No.
Yeah, but fantastic. Watch it. It is great. Quickly moving on. Mohammed Iqbal.
Part 2 Westerns, Now You're Talking. So he's given them, are we going 5 to 1?
Let's go, yeah, reverse order.
5 to
all
1.
of them.
So number 5 is 3:10, or 10 past 3, to Humour.
It's 3:10.
3:10. I'm just saying, you know, we'll get the bus. 3:10.
15:10.
3:10, yeah, it's AM that. 3:10 to Humour, brilliant story of human endurance and fatherly love and responsibility. Number 4, A Fistful of Dollars. Same reason as above. So The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, number 3. It's a classic with a bit of comedy, reminds me of Bollywood. So same reasons for them too. Number 2, Tombstone, true story. And number 1, Unforgiven, because of the intriguing title.
Yes, so just to give you a little bit of insight, as I mentioned before, Mohammed Iqbal, a very close friend and teacher of mine, is very much into his philosophy, religion, existentialism, things like that. So for him, he looks for these kind of, subtle undertones in all of these films. So Unforgiven, which I rewatched because so many people put it as in their top 5, and I'm not a fan, and I rewatched it. And yes, it's good, and I love Clint Eastwood, and it's fantastic, but it's still not one of my top 5 films. But hey, each to their own, and I put that down to my own shortcomings. Miguel. Hola, Miguel. Hey lads, hope all is good. Top 5 Westerns.
Yes, same shit again as well, right?
Same shit, different week. Yeah. Number 5, Unforgiven or High Noon. Take a pick.
Coin flip. It's High Noon.
High Noon, which is John Wayne, I believe.
Think so.
I don't know. It's one I've not seen. Here's interesting. This is why I like this, because there are a lot of films I have not seen.
Fucking finally.
Yes, and I'm loving it. I'm looking forward to them. Number 4, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. All right. Number 3, The Searchers. John Ford, who is obviously the director, but it's John Wayne's reputed best film.
Oh,
yeah, The Searchers. We're going to hear a lot about The Searchers tonight. And he says, Tariq, you know this. I am knowing this now, Miguel. Number 2, The Wild Bunch. Quality by Sam Peckinpah. I need to say this like this. Sam Peckinpah. Sam Peckinpah, The Wild Bunch. And number 1, Once Upon a Time in the West. Do you know anything about this film?
I'm aware of it.
You are aware. It is fantastic. It is Sergio Leone again. In a return, he did the Dollars trilogies with Clint Eastwood and everything. He wanted to go away and make Once Upon a Time in America. That took years to complete, right, and everything with that. He had all sorts of problems. In the meantime, he was dragged back by the studio to do Once Upon a Time in the West because the studio wanted a film for Henry Fonda. He didn't want to do it. He was reluctant. He asked Clint Eastwood to be in it again. Clint Eastwood said, I want to go away and do my own thing. So he cast Charles Bronson in.
Charles Bronson.
Yes, fantastic. And he put Henry Fonda as the villain, which shocked Americans because he was, the blue-eyed boy. Yeah. And Henry Fonda apparently was aware of this and turned up for shooting in a disguise with like a big tash and brown contact lenses.
I was going to say, I bet he had brown lenses.
And he made him take them out. He says, no, I want them. And in that shot, you watch that shot, camera rises up from below up to his blue eyes, and they reveal it's Henry Fonda, this cruel guy who's just done this atrocious thing in the opening scenes. But yeah, Once Upon a Time, it's brilliant. He worked in all his films alongside Ennio Morricone.
Yes, yeah. Famous composer.
All of his characters, not all of his characters, but in every film, one character plays a musical instrument. And he does it in this, it's a mouth organ. It's got another name and it's fantastic.
Oh, one of the, right, yeah.
Brilliant. And the opening scene is actually all lots of sounds make up the sort of ambient music. Yeah, it's fantastic. You've got to watch this film. It's brilliant. And it's, like I say, it's different from the Dollars trilogy, because in the Dollars trilogy, he's always got, they're a bit quirky. There's always a bit of humour in there. Maybe less so in the second one, Fistful of Dollars, which I'll talk about. But they were quirky, the characters were quirky, they were larger than life, some of them, and there was humour right alongside the violence, so it's kind of dark comedy. But with Once Upon a Time in the West, it's completely different. It's a different type of film that he does. It's much slower paced, and the violence has much more of an impact, and he looks at the build up to the violence. So it's not all about the violence. It's not like Quentin Tarantino throwing buckets of ketchup around. But he's basically, he looks at, and there's so much silence in this film. It's fantastic. It's all about.
To be honest, it would be nice that so many films nowadays. Sorry, just too
No,
much.
go for it. Yeah.
Too much. That's why I like these old films, because it's calm and everything's everything means something.
It's so much.
Sorry, T.
No. I want you to jump in. I want you to put in it, because otherwise it's just me talking all the time. But it's very much about the mise en scène and what's happening.
That's French.
Yes. So it means, what's in the frame.
Not missing scene, as I said in the Tarantino episode.
Yeah.
Got some missing scene here.
But moving on. Anyway, enough about that. Miguel, top choices. Love them. Yeah. Wild Bunch we're going to talk about later, hopefully, as well. FPL Claret.
FPL Claret.
And, hold on, he's a Burnley fan. So you need to do it in a Burnley accent.
It's just Lancashire, isn't it?
Lancashire.
Just Lancashire.
Yes, a bit stronger. Yeah.
So does Westworld count, or is it too sci-fi? That's very Rochdale. That's old Rochdale I'm doing that.
Via West Country.
Yeah, fuck off, it's not. So that's the word of West Country.
Do you know Westworld?
Yes, Yulbrunner, the sheriff, who was the animatronics come to life. He said,
Brilliant.
Does Westworld count, or is it too sci-fi? Wikipedia did it earlier. It said sci-fi/western. It counts.
Yeah.
Do not worry.
On the same token, we're not going to count Daniel Craig's really crappy film where he's a cowboy and there's aliens. That one we're not. Luckily.
Cowboy. Yeah, is it Cowboys and Aliens? Isn't it? Is that what it's called?
Is it literally that?
It's literally
inventive?
Cowboys and Aliens.
Yeah.
I think,
Wow. Okay. Nobody brought that up. Thank goodness. But yeah, Yulbrunner and Westworld does count, and even the TV series is really good as well with Andy Newton. That's really
yes, just come out, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So he said, does Westworld count? Yes, it does, mate. Also, True Grit, The Hateful Eight, Good, Bad and Ugly, obviously, and Shane.
Shane! Come back, Shane! Shane! Anyway, there's lots of quotes. Most of you won't have seen Shane. Very good film.
Old film, isn't it?
It is very old, yeah. There was something I forgot to mention on the early one, 310 to Yuma. I need to mention this quickly. Mohammed Iqbal is referring to the modern, I think it's 2007, possibly a bit later, with Christian Bale and Australian guy.
Hugh Jackman?
But the other one.
Russell Crowe?
Russell Crowe, yes. There was a remake, and it's fantastic as far as remakes go. I do recommend you watch the 1957 original as well, 310 to Yuma, because the new one is enticing because of the characters. The old one is all about the plot and the characters rather than the actors playing them. It's a brilliant story. You've got to watch that film. I'm not going to tell you too much about it. But yes, sorry, getting back to FPL Claret. It's a good choice. True Grit is... you didn't mention whether True Grit is the old John Wayne one.
Oh, the remake with
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges. Yeah.
I like that one. I watched the Jeff Bridges one.
I just fucking like Jeff Bridges, to be honest. He's cool as
He's
shit.
good, isn't he? Yeah, from The Big Lebowski, the dude abides. Yeah, but True Grit, yes. Hateful Eight, no. Awful film. We'll maybe talk about that later. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, yes. We could have been the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly if Riz was
could,
here.
but there's no Riz.
Yeah.
So, well, it just could be harsh, but no, it's Riz is the good.
Shane, have you seen Shane? You heard anything about it?
I'm aware of it, and I know it's a very, very old film, but I've never seen it.
It is a very good film. I think Riz gives a bit more of a description of it, but it's basically, an underdog, put upon guy who comes in and he's taking on somebody bigger than him. He's the underdog, but he's got high ideals, high morals, and he thinks if we can win, the world or the community will be a better place. So he's very naive in that sense, very earnest. There's an inevitability about it, whether he's going to lose or whether things are going to change for the better. So it's a very good film on that count. Not a great Western by all accounts, but a good film, again, for story-wise. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice one.
Shumus, hello, and thank you, Shumus. I will not mock you today, despite your top 5, in no particular order. Django Unchained. The only thing I'll say, I will not talk about that film. What I'll tell you, Shumus, is, again, going back about Tarantino, just regurgitating and spewing anything and everything that he sees. There are so many spaghetti westerns with the character of Django, so look them up. There are so many. Yeah, I found about half a dozen at least, and I've seen maybe a couple of them. So there's lots of Django films, so go and look them up. Hateful Eight is rubbish. The Magnificent Seven, new one, not seen the old one. You need to see the old one, Shamus, and when you do that, then you need to go and watch the film that it's based on, Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Yeah, do yourself a favour, educate yourself. The new one was rubbish. I like Chris Pratt.
Yes,
yeah,
I like Chris Pratt.
I like him, but it was rubbish. The characters were rubbish in it as well. The portrayal of it. Wild Wild West and The Revenant. Yeah, The Revenant we're going to talk about was the
Leonardo DiCaprio getting bummed by a bear.
Mauled. Yeah, great film. We debated whether it was a western. And I'm going to let you read the response, the best response I got. And FPL Mario is Scottish.
Oh, interesting, because I looked it up and what I found was at odds with this. So it's Scottish.
He's Scottish.
He's Scottish, whereas?
I don't know.
I can get in a certain husband. Revenant is not a western, but a good film. The full story of Glass is incredible, and this film didn't do it full justice, in my opinion. And I'm not having any of this Tarantino shit.
Hear, hear. A translation of that is Revenant is not a western but a good film. The full story of Glass, the character portrayed by Leo, is incredible, and the film didn't do it full justice in my opinion, and I'm not having any of this Tarantino shit. Do continue.
Yep, so then FPL Mario's choices have been, let's see, okay, I'll go number 5, Unforgiven. Number 4, Searchers. Number 3, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Number 2, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And number 1, Once Upon a Time in the West. Left out Blazing Saddles, as I'd categorise it as a comedy, but just personal opinion. Fair enough, pal. We say it's Western.
Yes, give us your opinions. Yeah, we make the rules around here, Mario. And we say it's all good. Yeah, just a quick one, a couple of minutes on this little session before I have to stop the camera. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, seen it?
Nope.
No. Robert Redford.
Yeah.
That's a fairly unknown back then. He got cast in that. And my man Paul Newman. My secret man crush. Fantastic, yeah. And I've got fond memories of this because this Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid is probably the first Western that I can remember. You know, much like you get asked, what's the first World Cup you remember? What is the first World Cup you remember?
France 98.
France, what? That late? France 98?
Well, did that before at the other one.
Yeah, well, I forget how younger you are.
I know, yeah, I'm just looking.
Okay. Mine was Mexico 86. Yeah, the invention of the Mexican wave. But anyway, I remember Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid at my cousin's house in Wolverhampton. I was sitting around the television on a Sunday afternoon watching Butch Cassidy, and I loved it. It was fantastic. It's a buddy movie, two buddies getting in japes and scrapes and having an adventure, and it was fantastic. And coincidentally, a little bit of trivia for you. In the said film, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, there's a sequel as well, but it's not as good. Their gang is called the Hole in the Wall Gang. Initially, it was supposed to be called The Wild Bunch, but the film of said name, Wild Bunch, was due to be released just before, I think, or just after.
Yeah.
So for that reason, they changed the name of their gang to the Hole in the Wall Gang. On to the next one, fellow Rochdalian who's been in contact before, Mohammed Sakib. Thank you, Sakib, for your input. We all appreciate everybody's input, in fact, before I carry on. Yeah, really appreciate it. I know I take the mickey sometimes, Shumas and Sakib, other Sakib, but I really do appreciate it. Mohammed Sakib comes in with number 5, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, for the simple reason the 3 main characters are states that we are all well versed in and therefore can empathise with. So I'm going for a very sort of philosophical approach there, yeah. Number 4, The Undefeated. Had to have a John Wayne one, and he's been trying to convince me of the John Wayne. This was John Wayne's first movie after receiving an Oscar as he partnered with Rock Hudson. Set after the American Civil War, it showed the ground reality of feuds that continued despite the war being over. And it also has a comedy element making it believable. Yeah, I will look that up. Number 3, The Magnificent Seven Original. Thank you, Sakib. Thank you very much. Shows that when people unite, then any obstacles can be overcome. Good and bad people who have been outcast can come together for a common goal. You can tell Sakib's a very nice guy.
Yeah, he's so lovely.
Yeah, seeing the silver lining to every cloud. I'm the exact opposite, but never mind. Number 2, The Last of the Mohicans. Yes, you're the only person who mentioned that film. Fantastic. Mr. Day-Lewis, big fan of his, yeah? Daniel Day-Lewis as Hawkeye is on par with Mel Gibson's William Wallace.
That's interesting because that's Scottish as well.
Hawkeye.
The New.
All right, I did not know that. I didn't know
Sorry.
that. Man.
Sorry, rubbish gag. Carry on, T.
Okay, but Braveheart gets a lot of stick. I think it's fantastic. Freedom! Anyway, it focuses on deep-rooted issues and resentment between the French, the British and the Native Indians. Oh, Native Americans, Sakib. Let's be PC about this. Native Americans. Ain't no Indians no more. And number 1, Unforgiven. A man looking to do the right thing after years of wrong. Also, it was his first Western after so many years and it lived up to the billing. Would you count Bridges of Madison County as a Western? You probably wouldn't.
No.
It's a love story set in, I'm sure it's not Deep South. But anyway, by the by, thank you, Sakib. Wonderful, wonderful selection. Over to you, Liam.
Cheers, mate. Giroud's top. By the way, he's number 4 on France's all-time goal-scoring list. My shout for Player of the World Cup is coming true.
Giroud, wow.
So Giroud's top says, I like slow and good-looking westerns, character over action, and I like westerns with an air of inevitability. Often where the older guy feels driven to obsessively pursue a goal that might destroy him. Not a fan of John Wayne, too hokey for me.
Yes.
And a point on that, we're going to do a Clint Eastwood special at some point, I would like to.
Okay.
And the slow and good looking thing with films, very much a fan of that older thing, like Rocky for instance, that pacing. Pacing's what we need. So his choices are, he said, you can add Ride Lonesome from 59 as a 5th outsider pick, it's beautiful. Number 4, he's got McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Number 3, Johnny Guitar.
Johnny Guitar.
Number 2, Assassination of Jesse James. And number 1 again, Unforgiven.
Okay, right. Giroud's top, thank you very much for those choices. But from what you've said, I love what you said. You like slow and good-looking westerns. On that basis, you should be watching Once Upon a Time in the West. You will love that film. But yeah, very good choices, Giroud. Thank you very much. Ride Lonesome. I'm going to look that up. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, I have no idea. Johnny Guitar.
Yeah, there's some left field choices in this.
Yeah. I've seen, again, like a lot of films, I've seen bits of films. I've got a feeling I've seen Johnny Guitar. Assassination. Now, I'm going to talk about that later. Yeah, great film, great choice there. Who are we on to next?
FPL Fring.
Oh, our friend Mr. Fring. My turn?
Yep.
Hard to choose. I've gone with what I enjoy. By the way, I don't know where Fring is from. You'll have to tell us, Fring, so I can do the accent for you. Hard to choose. I've gone with what I enjoyed watching with my dad on a Sunday afternoon growing up, like much of us. Possibly The Wild Bunch at number 1. Not everybody's first choice due to the violence and no real good guys as lead characters, but it's one that really sticks out to me. So, let's see who goes with Once Upon a Time in the West. Big thumbs up. The Searchers, gonna look that up. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is actually about a lawyer, I think. I think it's about a lawyer and John Wayne's in it. Can't remember who the lawyer is. But anyway, I don't think it's one I will watch. The Wild Bunch, this one keeps coming up. Do you know much about this one?
No.
It's a fantastic film. I actually watched it. Back in the 90s, there used to be a programme on BBC2 called The Movie Drone. And it was on late at night, and there was this guy, I can't remember his name, really interesting guy, who'd give you a little intro. They'd have, like we're doing, they'd have different genres coming up every month or every week, and they'd pick a left field kind of film, and I watched so many good films late at night. I'd have to creep downstairs in the dark, not put the lights on and watch it in the dark on the black and white
Most
telly.
people are doing that to watch different kinds of movies, to be honest.
Hey, well, that's the kind of sick, twisted guy that I am. I come down to watch westerns.
2 a.m. Western.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, so I watched The Wild Bunch and it's fantastic. Riz is going to talk about it in his choice. And number 1, The Man with No Name trilogy. I know that's cheating, but hey, Fring, as we've said, That's fine. We make up the rules. He's gone with the 3 films, Fistful of Dollars. They've been known both as the Man with No Name trilogy
And the Dollars trilogy, is it?
and the Dollars trilogy. Yes, great films, and I'm going to talk about slight subtle differences in between them later as well. I've gone classic over modern, which is fine, but Unforgiven gets a special mention, as does. Do you want to work out what film that is?
Well, it might also come up in a minute as well.
Okay.
So, do you want me to say now?
Yeah.
Yep, Back to the Future, Part 3.
Great film. Again, not a Western, set in a Western theme, but anyway, never mind. My friend Sakib, hopefully he's still my friend.
So there's 2 that aren't really lists, so I'll bang them together. And then
because he kind of, because of my persistent mickey taking of his film choices and his film education, he overcompensated and gave me quite a hefty list with some, really thought out reasoning why. So we just haven't got time, Sakib, unfortunately. So I've had to leave those out because they are all covered by other people. But you made these 2 very good points.
Yep, so he's gone for The Three Amigos. What a movie. It makes me happy whenever I watch it. Is that the Steve Martin one? The comedy?
Chevy Chase, Steve Martin and...
Aykroyd? No?
Martin Short, little guy, literally.
Yeah. So, Three Amigos. He says, I've not watched Tombstone or Unforgiven. They are next on my list, and the new Netflix Western.
Interesting. The new Netflix. I mean, Three Amigos, first of all, love it. Yeah, love the song. I'm tempted to put it on now. There's a podcast, FantasyPremierLeague podcast on Twitter by a lady and 2 gents who call themselves the Three Amigo, and they use that song at the beginning of their podcast.
I like it.
And they're probably not watching, so I will say that's the only reason I listen to their podcast, is for that song. But yeah, you talk about, Sakib, the new Netflix Western. Now, the new Netflix Western, I put this message out on Monday, and I saw that on Netflix on the weekend. It just came up this weekend. It's a new, exclusive to Netflix series by the Coen brothers. Do you know anything of the Coen brothers?
Joel and
Ethan, yeah. Very kooky, very eccentric. I love them. I think they're fantastic. They're on Barton Fink, I think. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
that was brilliant.
You like that, yeah?
Pretty good, yeah.
Fairly sure that was Coen brothers, fairly certain it was, but Fargo's another classic.
Yes.
Coen brothers, fantastic. Sakib, I don't think you're going to like it, from what I know about your film choices. Coen brothers are very out there. They're not Tarantino. Yeah, Tarantino wishes he was like them, but the characters are larger than life, very eccentric. The dialogue and the script is fantastic, always, isn't it, with the Coen brothers? And I've watched the first couple of episodes of. It's called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Buster Scruggs, I can't remember. But it's not a film. It's not a Western. It is an anthology. It's because, again, Coen brothers are very much about characters, aren't they? A lot of the time, they're about characters and the dialogue between them. And this is an anthology, so lots of short stories, seemingly unrelated, set in the West, but it's a very stylized, I don't want to say garish, it's very stylized Western environment, yeah. So it's not strictly a Western, but it's very good. I loved it. The first part, I mean, hopefully the anthology goes full circle, because I won't tell you what happens, but you meet Buster Scruggs in the first first chapter, and then it moves from character to character to character, and yeah, see where it goes, but it's fantastic. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Next one.
Yep, so the next one is from Sean, and he has given us, he's basically a massive Clint Eastwood fan and the Spaghettis. Yeah. So he said you could pick any of them or any of Clint's.
Anything.
And then he's given special mention to Fistful of Dollars and High Plains Drifter.
High Plains Drifter, yes.
Yep.
Clint Eastwood. Sean, I can't remember. There is one film where Clint Eastwood has a name.
I think in all of them he has a name, and he's only called it like once.
Possibly.
But it's like, John, can you pass me that? And then
he is called John. John Dredger.
There's another one. There's another one he's called like Mancho or something. Mancho. He's got another weird name. Yeah. But like you said, I think there is one of them where he's actually got some. It's hinted at more than the others.
Yeah. But I agree with you, Sean. In my honourable mentions, I had, my favourite picks of his: Hang 'em High, Pale Rider, and High Plains Drifter. I think High Plains Drifter, I get these confused. I'm fairly certain High Plains Drifter, because in these three films, let's talk about these then: Hang 'em High, Pale Rider, and High Plains Drifter. He comes in as the instrument of justice.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, in one of them, he's a preacher. In one of them, he's a former lawman done wrong, and he comes to get revenge. As the preacher, he comes to, dispense his brand of justice. And I'm fairly certain High Plains Drifter, he is very much the Antichrist, but the place where he comes deserves his justice. And have you seen it with your dad?
No.
You've got to watch it. It's the one I'm thinking of. It's where he comes to a town and they're trying to fight these bandits who are going to leave prison and come and wreak havoc on this town, and they are cacking him. And so their former lawmen are all killed, and they find him and they say, listen, you've got to help us. And he basically exploits the situation. He is no saint at all. He literally, one of the leading ladies tries testing his limits and pushing his buttons and stuff, and he puts her in a place right there, right at the beginning of the film. Yeah, in no uncertain terms.
Go on, Clint.
Yeah, you've got to watch it. It's not pretty. It's not, if you've got a delicate sensibility, don't watch it. But he basically exploits them and takes them for all they're worth. And yeah, kind of does what he asks, but in a subverted kind of way, twisted way. But fantastic. Carrying on, sorry for that interruption.
No, you're very welcome, mate. Riz's. So, thank you, Riz, for these. We miss you, mate. Come back soon. Number 5, he's got Stagecoach, not the bus company, but the combo of Wayne/Ford, aka Ringo. I think this was like a revolution, a template for other westerns that followed, nicely put together.
I've no idea. I always thought Stagecoach was a musical, like Oklahoma. Oklahoma. Anyway.
And then number 4 is the fit with this bloody hat. I keep going over it on. Number 4 would be the Wild Bunch, right from the opening gunfire scene, which I think lasts over 20 minutes. Don't quote me on it. I just did, mate. Sorry about that. It is epic. The slow motion, the whole story of an aging gang, the level of graphic violence, and Peckinpah's uses of slow motion is mint.
Sam Peckinpah.
Peckinpah.
Yeah.
Number 3, he's got Shane, the story of the reluctant underdog, going against the odds with his ideals, make this a great western. Number 2, Unforgiven is one of the best for Clint Eastwood, with outstanding performances by the cast. It is a brilliant cast. He's given us a couple here. The cast: Eastwood, Freeman, Hackman. It's a masterpiece by Clint Eastwood, an all-rounder, actor, director, producer and composer. Definitely, mate, he would be a solid number 5 or 6 in the England batting lineup, I feel. No, he's a cracking... Eastwood is...
yeah,
I love him.
Love Eastwood, yeah.
And number 1 for Riz, he's gone for The Searchers, John Ford's best film in my view. Wayne and Ford, a real partnership. The Searchers calls into question the whole cowboy versus Indian myth and has some incredible cinematography and storytelling. It's what I call a western epic.
Fantastic.
Riz, you're doing Tarek out of a job here, mate.
No, brilliant. This is what I want, people. This is what I want.
He's continued.
Oh, yes.
Riz continued, sorry,
because he gave us some notable mentions, and I says, well, talk about it, and here's what he said.
Magnificent Seven. I don't think there is much to choose from them both, but I think the old one slightly edges it in. The old one slightly edges it for me, but not a lot in it. The only reason why that is because remakes don't do justice to the original ideas and story, so that's why I'm going for it. Although I remember Tarek saying once it was based on Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There's a big difference, Riz. The big difference between the old one and the new one. The new one is awful. It is absolutely rubbish. The old one is fantastic. The cast is fantastic as well. Characters and the acting and everything. Yeah. But yeah, thank you, Riz. Really appreciate taking time out when you're supposed to be working, but never mind. That's okay. Yeah. The Wild Bunch again. We've got to talk about that because it's very violent. It's about a gang who are on the cusp of becoming irrelevant and being passed by, and they just want to stay relevant. A very good film, very brutal as well. And The Searchers. I mean, Riz has kind of put it as his number 1, as if suggesting between him and Sakib that you've got to go look up John Wayne, and I think I will. Right, so we're running out of time. We're running out of battery power. So I'm going to do mine later. I'll record them separately. You give us yours, Liam.
Yep, so mine, as you know, I just like to wind Tarek up and give some, a bit of left field ideas.
Crap films.
So,
go for it.
So one of them I've come with is Back to the Future Part 3. You said it's not a Western. Hell yeah, it is. It even has video footage of a Western in it.
Okay.
So there's 2 Westerns for the price of one there, mate. The other one I'm going to do is some, but they're not really in any order, to be honest. I'll go for Shanghai Noon. So Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson. I like Owen Wilson.
Awesome. Bringing karate and Chinese influences to the Wild West. Brilliant. I was 10 years old when it came out. I love Jackie Chan. It's fucking awesome. I don't care.
Okay, fair enough. Why don't you put it in the top 5 kung fu films?
I think it was.
Did you?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
2 for the price of 1.
2 for the price of 1. It's going to come up again and again. With 2 more choices. The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Worth it just for the theme tune alone.
Yes.
And Fistful of Dollars, which we've covered both of them already. And the other one, Clint Eastwood film. Modern one. Gran Torino. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The story is a Western. Yes. Well, what makes a Western? You said. What makes a Western? Is it the setting, or is it?
Yes. Yes, the story is a Western. You know what? I was thinking that.
Just fucking line that. Oh, just fucking line that, kid.
I was thinking about yesterday, and I'm thinking it is a Western.
It is.
It's so much like. It's a lot like Unforgiven. It's essentially the same story as Unforgiven, with a few little twists on it. But yeah, okay, fine. It's got a former cowboy in it. And it has a steed.
It does, yeah.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So is that your 5?
That's my 5, yeah, just to wind you up, mate.
Pretty good. You know what? I'm impressed that you've actually seen some films, that you've seen The Three Amigos, and what was the very first one? The Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles, yeah.
And pretty good choices, you know what I mean? They're not as bad as some we've had. We won't mention any names.
And I've not even mentioned Yosemite Sam.
Yeah.
From the Looney Tunes.
Yeah. I was thinking about him as well. I thought, you really look like him. But yeah, we will leave it there because I'm going to have to record mine and our notable mentions separately, so I'll maybe do that tomorrow evening at home or something like that. And we'll stop there, so I won't say goodbye just yet.
I will. Bye!
Okay, so on to my top 5, last of the show. Yeah, I know we ran out of time yesterday, so I'm having to do this extra little take on my own because I know you all want to hear my top 5, we want to miss on that. So that's all there is. Bear with us, yeah, not long to go now. My top 5 and a few honourable mentions and then done and dusted. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. I do feel a bit like the Lone Ranger here today without my partners around me, but never mind, we'll crack on. My top 5, in at number 5, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Clint Eastwood, obviously. My favourite film, well, one of them anyway, of his. Fantastic, I think, in terms of, again, the characters. It was just cool as anything. It's maybe, exaggerated slightly. He's supposed to be a farmer, but he's a really good hand with a pistol anyway. But yeah, some of those comparisons as well, like say when I rewatched Unforgiven, you can see the influences that Clint Eastwood has had throughout his career. In particular, one point I remember in The Outlaw Josie Wales where at the trading post he's got the old Native American man with him as well, and they're confronted by a gang, 3-4 people, and he takes them all out. Fantastic scene that is. And the old man asks him, well, who did you decide you were going to go for first? And he talks about the characters, one was scared, one was a bit itchy, and he goes, the guy with the crazy eyes, I went for him first, I knew he was the deadliest. And you see a similar sort of thing being talked about in Unforgiven with the sheriff, Gene Hackman, when he's talking to the writer in the cell, and he says about being cool under pressure and things like that. So a lot of these influences from his earlier career showing up later in Clint's own other films. So that was number 5. Number 4, the original Magnificent Seven with Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen and all the rest of the boys. Absolutely fantastic film. Highly recommend it. If you've only seen the newer one, you've got to go back and watch that. And as I've said earlier in the show as well, you've got to go and check out Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai that is based upon. In at number 3, somebody else mentioned this film, great film, The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. It stars Brad Pitt and Casey Affleck, who I'm a big fan of. I mean, I like Brad Pitt as well. A lot of people are down on him, criticising him only being able to, you know, not having a lot of depth, only playing the same character. But I think he's fantastic. I really like him. And Casey Affleck is really good. I'm currently halfway through Manchester by the Sea as well, and I really like that film. So The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. If you know anything about the Jesse James story, you know what's going to happen in this film. But similarly to what we talked about with Once Upon a Time in the West, Sergio Leone's film, it's more about, it's not the actual violence or what's going to happen, you know, it's about the motivations and what's leading up to the violence as well. So when it eventually turns, I don't want to give you any spoilers, but when it eventually happens, it's not the highlight. It's not, although you're waiting for it and expecting it, it's not what the film's all about. It's about the relationship by these two, and you know, the problems with notoriety and infamy, good and bad. So I don't want to give anything more away about this film. It is a fantastic film. I highly recommend you look it up and give that a watch, because like I say, nobody seems to have either seen it or at least hasn't mentioned it anyway. There's only one other person. In at number 2, we've spoken a lot about this film already. Once Upon a Time in the West by Sergio Leone, his epic masterpiece with Charles Bronson, Henry Fonda cast as the villain. Really good. Not going to say too much more about it. We can't say anything more than we've already said. And in at number 1 for me, from the Dollars trilogy, initially I put all 3 in, but when the answers started coming in, and I know Fring cheated and said he was going to have all 3, other people have gone for the latter, the third, the good, the bad and the ugly. I think one person mentioned the first one, A Fistful of Dollars. Incidentally, just to mention on that, I can't remember if we've spoken about this already, Fistful of Dollars is essentially frame for frame pretty much remake of Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo. So check that out as well, where basically a loner comes into town. He's obviously skilled, pretty talented, pretty handy with a weapon, and he plays 2 rival feuding factions off against each other. Classic story. It's been done loads of times in loads of other films. One that comes to mind, a particularly poor version of it, was I think it was in the 90s, Bruce Willis, Last Man Standing. Yeah, don't bother with that one, but watch the original Yojimbo and obviously Fistful of Dollars. But for me, my personal pick of the Dollars trilogy is the second in the series, for a few dollars more. And the reason I like this one over any of the other 2, I love the other 2, especially the third one, big fan of that, but number 2 for me, the bad guy, and I can't remember his name, you know how bad I am with names, it's Silvio, something like that. But he's a real nasty piece of work, and in this film Sergio Leone everything seems to be concentrated, as in, you know, a bit more distilled. There's less of a comedy element like there is with Tuco in the third one, The Good, Bad and the Ugly. It's just a little bit more raw, a little bit more intense, and I love that, and especially love the music in this as well, from the watch piece. He has the little watch, and that's very poignant as well as to how he obtains the watch and the regrets he has over that. So even the bad guy, the villain, is a very complex character in this, and that's why I like it. It's not just your straightforward good v bad. So that was my number 1. So running through the top 5 again: Outlaw Josie Wales, The Magnificent Seven, the original one, The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, Once Upon a Time in the West, and my number 1 for a few dollars more. That is my favourite Western of all time. Nearly done. Just a few honourable mentions, not as much as we had in previous. I know in the gangster films and the top 5 kung fu, there were a lot, and here, this is maybe reflecting my ignorance of a lot of Westerns, because as I said earlier in the show, I've not watched a lot of the pre-60s ones, the James Coburn and, you know, particularly John Wayne. I am going to seek out The Searchers and definitely give that a watch, because that's been mentioned a lot throughout the show. But here, some honourable mentions. Firstly, Young Guns. I love that film, from obviously the 90s, and a bit more of a caper. So if you're not heavy into your Westerns, if you find them a bit slow and you're not too much into them, I could definitely recommend as a starter, as a route in, the Young Guns, which starred a fantastic cast, Emilio Estevez as Billy the Kid, Kiefer Sutherland, way before he hit 24 and everybody knew about him, And who else was in it? Lou Diamond Phillips is fantastic in that. He's a little known actor. He did a few films back in the 90s and early 2000s. He was very good. And Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen is the other one, and there's one other as well, but he's a little known character. There's a sequel, Young Guns 2, with Christian Slater, and it's still good, but in my opinion not as good as Young Guns, the first one. It is fantastic, really good story, kind of fast paced, entertaining, so definitely look that one up. After that, we've already spoken via Sean's choices, Hang 'em High, Pale Rider, High Plains Drifter, so I won't say much more about them. Appaloosa. Now, not a great film in my opinion, but a good film nonetheless, and it stars Ed Harris and Viggo Mortensen, who are always good value. And I might be wrong about this, but I think they both also starred in the later film, not a Western, but A History of Violence. Essentially, going back to what Liam said about his choice about Gran Torino, A History of Violence is essentially a Western story as well. But look out for Appaloosa, pretty good. Two guys get called in to help out a town, usual shtick. After that, this one you may not have heard of. I think it's a late 70s film, 4 of the Apocalypse, and it's a bit different. It's not going to be to everyone's taste. 4 of the Apocalypse are basically 4 outsiders, 4 outliers, 3 men and a woman. I think she's a pregnant prostitute or something like that. And they're down and out. One's a gambler, one's an addict, one's something else. And they're being tracked and chased by a really nasty bandit. I can't remember the reason why. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I might look it up again, hopefully, because it was a good film. So 4 of the Apocalypse. After that, a story we've mentioned prior, Gunfight at the OK Corral, which again is the story of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday in the town of Tombstone. So again, if anybody didn't know that, Tombstone is named after the town where the incident took place. And the Gunfight at the OK Corral stars Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. And if I remember correctly, again, been a long while since I've seen it, I think it's Burt Lancaster who plays the character of Doc Holliday. And as I say, he's a character I like. He's a bit more entertaining, he's a bit more raw around the edges, and you know, Wyatt Earp, Kirk Douglas and whoever else played him is the goody two-shoes essentially, which I don't relate to. After that, an interesting one. I was really surprised when I saw Marlon Brando in a couple of westerns. The one I could find the name of, I can't track down. The other one, I can't remember the name of it. But this one, One-Eyed Jacks, it's called. One-Eyed Jacks. Marlon Brando stars in it. He's a bandit, he's got a partner, they go do a heist, he gets double crossed. So essentially it's a revenge movie, and then there's a slight twist at the end. But really good acting by Marlon Brando, because if I remember correctly, I think this was supposed to be directed by Stanley Kubrick, who backed out for some reason, and Marlon Brando I think ended up taking over with help from somebody. So essentially it's a Marlon Brando film. He stars and he directs and does a lot of the other stuff in it. So look out for One-Eyed Jacks. There's actually another Marlon Brando Western, which is actually, I think, is the better one. But like I say, I've tried Googling it and everything, I can't find the name of this other Marlon Brando film. And that, I would say, to see his acting, because Marlon Brando, famous method actor, you know, really getting into character, he plays, he's a bit, you know, he's got a nut loose in that film, and he really acts it up, and it's fantastic. So if I can, I'll try and put it out somewhere on the video in the comment section or something like that. After that, Dead Man. Now here's a weird one as well. Again, not going to be to everyone's taste. Johnny Depp, I'm a big fan of Johnny Depp. In this, it's a strange film because it's kind of otherworldly. He's not a cowboy as such. I think he's a banker or something like that. He's you know, playing a decent professional man. He gets caught up in the wrong thing. He's being chased, and he comes across a guy, a Native American, who calls himself Nobody. And after that, it just gets a bit trippy. So you know, the best way to describe this is like a Western on acid or something. Yeah, it's a bit psychedelic. So if you go for that sort of thing, it is a good film, and it's completely different because obviously it plays into the stories of Native American folklore and culture of, you know, the spirit world and things like that. So the title Dead Man is emphasizing the lines are blurred between the real world and the spirit world, and it is fantastic. I definitely recommend you give that a watch. Final one, because I had Wild Bunch, we've already spoken about Wild Bunch, is little known film. Is it a Western? Because it's actually set in Australia. It is called The Proposition. Stars Ray Winston, Guy Pearce, a couple of other people I can't remember, but a really good little known film. As I say, set in the Australian outback, and I think Ray Winston is like the sheriff or something like that. But basically, a story of three brothers. One commits a crime, one escapes, and one is tasked with either finding his brother and bringing him to justice, or something worse is going to happen. And Guy Pearce, that's when I sort of really discovered Guy Pearce as an actor. And I might even be wrong, but it might have been his first role since leaving Neighbours, I think he was in. So showed his credentials, what a good actor he really is. So The Proposition, look that one up as well. And that is it. I'll take a breath now, and I'll add this on to the end of the previous clips, and hopefully it'll be a good viewing, good show for you guys. I've really enjoyed it. I know Liam loves doing it. Hopefully it'll give you some food for thought. Hopefully there's some films in there that you'd forgotten about or you've never even heard of. Look them all up. Like I say, some I found as well, and hopefully some of you found as well. Just before I finish, there's a couple of little things I wanted to mention. I've recently come across two really good podcasts, movie related, because usually I'm listening to FPL related, and to be honest, it's getting a bit much. So I fancied a change. So two really good movie podcasts. One is That Movie Room, which is two Australian or Kiwi gentlemen. I apologise, it's unlikely they like to be watching this, but really good. They're pretty much more into their science fiction, things like that, which I love. Science fiction might be a future top 5, I think. That's another point. If you want to give us any suggestions for future top 5s we want to do, I'm thinking either sci-fi. Liam suggested Clint Eastwood, but I think we'll give it a break before we do Clint Eastwood. Maybe top 5 animated, but whatever. If you've got something particular in mind, if there's a genre that you love, do get in touch via the comment section or on our Twitter account at Fulltime Banter 7. So That Movie Room, science fiction podcast, movie podcast, and the other one is at After the Ending. So the podcast is called After the Ending, by two gentlemen. One is a Scouse fella, Phil Edwards. He's on Twitter as well. Unfortunately, he's an Everton fan, but nevertheless, very good podcast, and alongside him is an American gentleman as well. And it's an interesting setup. It's not your usual review show. After the ending, what they do essentially, they open the show with, they pick a couple of films, and they then write the next few scenes. What would happen the day after the ending of a film? And it's really interesting, it's really good. So tune into that. And as well as that, they look at certain other things as well, new movies coming out, and they do a top 5 as well, but slightly very different to us in that they pick a particular year. So you find some really good obscure films which might not make it into an all-time top 5 usually, but of a year they pick some really good films out. So I could definitely recommend those two podcasts, That Movie Room and After the Ending. That is pretty much it. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back next week, more than likely with just an FPL show. If you like the movie shows, get in touch, tell us what you want done, because at the moment we're saving them now for the breaks, the international breaks when there's no football on. That gives us a chance, because there's a lot of editing goes into these, especially when I've got to put in all the movie posters and things like that. But thank you again for viewing. This is a Full-Time Banter Show. Goodbye, we'll catch you next time. Thank you.